their children can learn about world religions, tolerance, ethics, and living responsibly. 1900 Bering Drive. More at emersonhouston.org.
Checking out the weather, brought to you by Polyglot Attorney Mediator Arbitrator. A chilly one right now. It's going to get up to the mid-60s and then rain on your way home tonight. Going into Thursday morning as well. Looks like could rain Friday as well. We're going to see lows in the 50s tonight. Tomorrow's high in the 50s. Right now, 43 Conroe, 47 here at the University of Houston. Gulf Freeway headed out just outside the belt, still cleaning up what's left of that truck fires. Wreckers Hook up there in that right lane. Also over on 290 inbound before West Road, that 18-wheeler, he's been stalled out in the center lane. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. The service of the University of Houston, 9 o'clock.
The White House continues to defend a controversial campaign to target and kill the crews of small boats allegedly smuggling drugs from South America to the U.S. But just who is giving out those orders, and how does that campaign square with President Trump's pardon of a convicted Central American drug trafficker? I'm Craig Cohen. Today on Houston Matters, we seek context and clarity on those and other developments in politics in our weekly roundup.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also this hour, University of Houston political science professor and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus joins us to discuss the changing nature of political scandals. It's the subject of his latest book, Scandal: Why Politicians Survive Controversy in a Partisan Era. We'll start with a news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner spoke yesterday with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. There's been no breakthrough on a peace agreement to stop Russia's war in Ukraine. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports from Kyiv.
Analysts say Russian President Vladimir Putin likely will not sign any draft that has the Ukrainian green light, as the Kremlin has changed none of its maximalist demands. It wants Ukraine to give up territory Russia has been unable to take on the battlefield. Speaking to reporters, Putin blamed the Europeans for blocking peace, saying they had changed the draft proposal to make it unacceptable for Russia and would blame Russia if it fails. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking from Ireland, said Ukrainians need certainty and guarantees, and that joining the EU would be a guarantee of certainty for the Ukrainian people. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Kyiv.
The Department of Homeland Security says it has launched an immigration operation today in New Orleans. The Trump administration says it's targeting violent criminals, but immigrants' rights activists have been warning city residents to stay indoors if they're at risk of detention. Louisiana's Republican governor supports the effort. New Orleans Democratic mayor-elect says this is not what the city needs. President Trump unleashed a tirade of insults at people from Somalia yesterday that critics say is bigoted. During a cabinet meeting, Trump described immigrants from Somalia as garbage and more.
I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. Okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks. And we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too.
Trump's comments yesterday came as he's also threatened to end temporary protected status for Somali immigrants in Minnesota. Stocks are trading mixed this morning as two major retailers reported rising sales to inflation-weary customers. NPR's Maria Aspen reports the Dow's up about 100 points.
Investors are looking for more clues about how the economy is doing, and the news is mixed. Macy's said that its shoppers bought more than expected this fall, while discount retailer Dollar Tree also said that sales rose as consumers hunt for bargains. But there are more warning signs in the labor market. Private employers cut 32,000 jobs in November, according to payroll processor ADP. Economists had expected to see job growth. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is continuing to recover some lost ground after last month's crash. President Trump's crypto-friendly policies had helped send Bitcoin to record highs in October, but it remains volatile. The most recent sell-off wiped out more than $1 trillion in crypto market value.
You're listening to NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BritBox, committed to helping viewers unbox the unexpected over the holidays with British TV, including original series Lindley and a new season of Karen Peary, streaming at BritBox.com.
Hi, from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Harab. Several school districts are being sued by a coalition of advocacy groups, including the ACLU, over the displaying of the Ten Commandments in classrooms. The case was brought against 16 public school districts in Texas, including Katy, Clear Creek, Deer Park, Pearland, and Magnolia ISDs. Courts had already barred Conroe, Houston, Fort Bend, and Cypress Fairbanks from displaying the posters. This latest court filing is part of an ongoing effort by the ACLU and other groups who are saying the new state law violates the Constitution. The city of Houston is launching a first-of-its-kind firearm injury dashboard. It tracks clinical data, first responder data, and mortality records for firearm injuries. Our Michael Atkinson reports.
The firearm injury dashboard is live on the Houston Health Department's website now, and the advocates behind it say it reveals a troubling trend. While overall firearm-related injuries that resulted in hospitalization have gone down over the last 4 years, unintentional shootings of children and young adults are becoming more prevalent. Here's Houston City Council member Abby Kamen, who led the effort.
There's about a 70% gap between hospital visits and what we have in terms of police reports, revealing hundreds of injuries a year, people who we couldn't help because we didn't know about it.
The dashboard will be updated quarterly throughout the year. This year, emergency departments report 1,874 people came with gunshot injuries across Houston. I'm Michael Atkinson, News 88.7.
And after 48 days in federal custody, 15-year-old Emmanuel Gonzalez Garcia faced Houston Mayor John Whitmire and the city council. He was held by the federal government as an unaccompanied minor after becoming separated from his mother in October. Our Dominic Anthony Walsh reports activists are at odds over whether the Houston Police Department is to blame.
The firearm injury dashboard.
According to Mayor Whitmire, police handed Gonzalez Garcia over to state officials who referred him to federal custody. Cesar Espinoza, executive director of immigrant rights nonprofit Fiel Houston, says officers should have worked harder to connect Gonzalez Garcia to a missing child report filed earlier in the day by his mother, Maria Garcia. Whitmire accused Espinoza of using the teenager and his mother for political and financial gain.
You're exposing this mother and child to the authorities, and you're using them for the wrong reason.
No, I'm not.
Maria Garcia responded by saying Fiel helped more than city officials.
A mí nadie me está utilizando en nada.
Nobody's using me for anything.
Soy una mujer consciente.
I am a conscious woman.
City council members praised Houston police, but called for policy changes to prevent a similar situation in the future. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
And I'm Matt Harab, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Good morning. Thanks for joining us, as always, on News 88.7 or on our video stream at HoustonPublicMedia.org and also on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Coming up this hour, do political scandals really matter anymore? It's the subject of a new book from Party Politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus. Also, why the Houston area recently hosted a national showcase of black female soccer players. First, though, as NPR's been reporting, while the White House is defending a controversial campaign to target and kill the crews of small boats allegedly smuggling drugs from South America to the U.S., it is not entirely clear who's giving the orders to use deadly force. To discuss that and other developments in politics in our regular Wednesday political roundup, we are joined this morning by Mark Jones, political science fellow at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy, and Renee Cross, senior director at the Hobby School of Public Affairs at the University of Houston. Mark, Renee, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Greg.
While much of the attention has been on this September 2nd incident in which the U.S. attacked an apparently on fire and sinking boat, killing survivors instead of rescuing them. Since then, the U.S. has apparently conducted about 20 strikes in international waters and killed more than 75 people. The administration argues the boats are carrying drugs and therefore pose a direct threat to the U.S. There has been no public evidence to support those claims, even if there eventually is. Is this legal?
Well, according to the manual the Department of Defense put out in 2015, we cannot target anyone on a shipwrecked boat. And if we do, then it is illegal. I mean, it's very clear.
Even if we cause the shipwreck?
That I can't answer that. But I think I would think so, Craig, but I can't answer that.
Mark?
Well, no, this is definitely a situation where the Trump administration is going into waters that we haven't been in before. Using deadly force on non-combatants where it's not entirely clear what sort of direct, credible threat they represent to the United States is not something that has been done at this scale. We have had times, remember back during the Contra War, where there were some efforts along the Nicaraguan coast where U.S. sort of forces were somewhat involved, but nothing this direct where you have overtly U.S. military forces targeting ships of non-combatants in the sense that they don't represent a direct threat to life and limb of U.S. citizens or U.S. military forces and destroying them. Certainly from an international perspective, it's something that's being met by a lot of skepticism and outcry in the international community as a violation of international law.
And I guess also there is the distinction between, at least in the September 2nd incident, this question of this initial attack and whether you believe that is legal, and then the apparent second attack where you've got, as I understand it, a couple of folks surviving a boat on fire in the water, and they're killed rather than rescued.
Well, I think it's also telling that a number of Republicans and those that have, military expertise are speaking out against this.
On Tuesday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, I guess in answer to a question designed to clarify who gave what orders here, says of that September 2nd incident that he authorized and watched the first round of attacks, but not the second round, though he then did defend that second round attack decision as appropriate. Why is he making that distinction?
Well, I think it's along the lines of what you were saying, is that while there may be a justification for the first attack, it's more dubious for the second attack, and therefore he's putting some distance between himself and that decision. He's not throwing the people who made the decision completely under the bus because he is saying it was justified, but he's implying that he had nothing to do with it.
Is it ultimately clear who is directing these attacks?
I don't think it's ultimately clear. However, he is the Secretary of War, his title. So ultimately, the buck should stop with him. And I think one part that's especially troubling is that the story is already shifting so much. Sunday, Hegseth came out and said that this was fake news. It didn't happen that way. And then Monday, the White House comes back and says, okay, we did do this. And then, of course, we saw the backtracking in yesterday's conference with President Trump and Secretary Hegseth. So, we've got a lot of muddy waters here to get through.
Is a story shifting like that usually a sign somebody's done something wrong and nobody wants to be blamed for it?
Right, and it's also just generally part of the playbook. The playbook that the Trump administration increasingly uses is first essentially doesn't acknowledge it or says it's fake news or something that's invented. Then we'll say, okay, it occurred, but it occurred and it was justified. And then, the next stage would generally be to focus on something that Bill Clinton or Barack Obama did that maybe you could somehow link as a parallel, although the parallel would probably be pretty remote.
So what may be the political consequences here?
Well, Hegseth could be removed, which I think there was already some rumblings about that last week prior to so much attention on this particular incident.
Right. I think if the heat builds up too much and the pressure on the Trump administration gets too great, that would be the first option. Although, on the other hand, something else could come up next week and we could not be talking about this, and the Secretary of War could be quite all right.
As this is playing out, President Trump has officially pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez. The Federal Bureau of Prisons confirmed Hernandez's release on Monday. Hernandez had been sentenced to 45 years for conspiring to import cocaine to the U.S. So how does pardoning him square with the argument that this deadly force being used against drug trafficking out of Venezuela is necessary and appropriate?
Well, this was interesting because Honduras held presidential elections this past Sunday, where one of the leading candidates is a member of Nasri Asfura, is a member of Juan Orlando Hernandez's party, the National Party, and Trump endorsed him directly endorsing Asfura. Trump is making the claim that Juan Orlando Hernandez was set up and that he never did anything wrong. The evidence, I think, is pretty strong to the contrary, that Juan Orlando Hernandez ran a narco state, at least was involved with narco traffickers during his tenure as Honduran president. But it was very much linked to Trump weighing in the Honduran presidential election, as the two things occurred virtually simultaneously.
All right, so we've started off with a lot of international news. We have some national, state, and local developments to talk about as well. We're talking about what's going on in politics in our regular Wednesday political roundup, and we seek more context and clarity about these fast-moving events from Rice University's Mark Jones and the University of Houston's Renee Cross as Houston Matters continues.
Hi, I'm Lenny Ambrose from St. Arnold Brewing Company, proud supporters of Houston Public Media. Right now, with your $60 donation, you can choose tickets to News and Brews. This member-exclusive event takes place February 17th. Enjoy a pint, connect with fellow NPR fans, and meet the Houston Public Media newsroom in person. Select News and Brews tickets when you donate at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
It's tonight at 6:30.
Support comes from Theater Under the Stars, bringing you a forecast snowy white with Irving Berlin's Broadway musical White Christmas. Performances begin Tuesday at the Hobby Center. Tickets are available at tuts.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Baylor College of Medicine. With 125 years of innovation behind it, Baylor has driven progress in health and medicine through research, education, and care that push the frontiers of modern science.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. We are in the middle of our regular Wednesday political roundup this morning with Rice University political science fellow Mark Jones and Renee Cross, senior director and researcher at the Hobby School of Public Affairs at the University of Houston. The state's so-called bathroom bill will officially take effect starting tomorrow. The new law restricts access to restrooms and locker rooms based on the user's biological sex at birth. But it only applies to publicly owned buildings like libraries, public schools, prisons, and government facilities. Is it clear how it will be enforced?
It is certainly not clear to me.
No, but I think it's one of those issues that's more of a symbolic one in terms of the state taking this position. At the school level, though, there may be more enforcement simply because, and that's the place where it really is going to have the biggest effect, are public schools, both at the elementary and high school level, and then public universities, because they're the university officials and public school officials have to be on guard against any complaints by parents or other students that they aren't enforcing it. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to make sure that they are doing everything possible to enforce the legislation, because if not, they run the risk of the lieutenant governor, the attorney general getting directly involved in terms of what's going on at their school district level.
Yeah, Governor Abbott calls it a common sense law to make sure there are no men in women's restrooms. Opponents say it's a thinly veiled attack on transgender Texans. Politically, who benefits and who's hurt by this law now taking effect?
Well, I think the
LGBTQ.
Thank you. Community certainly feels threatened by this, whether it's closely enforced or not. On the flip side, Republicans definitely see this as a victory, and we've seen this at the forefront of several legislative sessions before it actually passed this year.
And it's popular legislation among the general public. It's one of the issues that Republicans will often focus on, in that virtually all Republicans agree with this legislation. It's up in the 90-95% range, but a majority of Democrats do as well. So it's an issue for Republicans that it mobilizes the base, it appeals to the base, but it doesn't cost you votes in November either, because a majority of Texans agree with it.
Costco has joined other companies in suing the Trump administration over its tariff policies. This would seem to be a move to recoup money should the Supreme Court find the tariffs illegal. Is it clear how the High Court might ultimately rule on the administration's policies?
Well, I think so far it appears that the Supreme Court might actually say that Trump does not have this power. What this serves, though, in a real world sense is, I believe, it is continuing to motivate the Democratic base that says, yay, Costco, they're going after President Trump. They're standing up for the little guy because Costco has been very clear that they have not raised prices. And that's why this lawsuit has come about. They haven't raised prices. So if this is determined unconstitutional, they have a right to recoup the money that they are losing.
To that end, are they going after the Trump administration or are they just going after money?
Probably both.
Probably both, but more money than anything else, I think.
The Trump administration announced Tuesday that it is pausing all immigration applications, including requests for green cards for people from 19 countries banned from travel earlier this year. This is on top of an initial travel ban that applied to a dozen countries, citizens of Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. There is now restricted access as well to people from Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. Any of those surprising?
No, I mean, this was something that the Trump administration already signaled earlier in the year, almost at the start of the administration, that it was putting these countries on a list, both because it had concerns about how people obtain passports, as well as visa overstayers and a whole host of things related to people who came from those countries. This is just deepening that effect. And it's probably also spurred by the murder of a National Guardsman by an Afghan immigrant or asylum seeker last week.
And do we have any further details in the last couple of days on that incident?
No, really, there has not much new has emerged there, other than the fact that this person was vetted by essentially the Department of Defense and was approved for asylum.
Well, he was formally charged with murder yesterday.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave the government side of things behind and get into the pure politics of election news. Republican Matt Van Epps won a special election Tuesday in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District over Democratic challenger Afton Ben. So why, Renee, are some Democrats pleased with the outcome?
Well, this is a very staunchly Republican district. President Trump won that district, a year ago by 22 points. So it should not have been a competitive race. However, going into this special election, polls were showing it to be very close. One, I believe, last week or within the last couple of weeks, had it within 2 points. So the fact that a Democratic state representative who is very openly progressive would even force an issue, as certainly in terms of resources, is big news. Democrats didn't expect to win this seat, but the fact that I guess he won it by 8 or 9 points.
By 9 points.
9 points. So that's a 13-point shift is very encouraging to Democrats. Now, if you also layer on the fact that we have, some states that are being redistricted to supposedly favor Republicans, what happens so often in those actions is it makes some of those districts maybe a little bit more competitive. Then you see this going on in a very conservative district, then I think there is some warranted alarm among Republicans.
Back here in Texas, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is poised to make some sort of announcement on Monday. Tell us about this, Mark.
Well, so Jasmine Crockett, a congresswoman from Dallas, has been discussing the idea of running for U.S. Senate. An earlier Hobby School, Texas Southern poll showed that in the Democratic primary, she would be the front runner. And I think she's conducting polls herself that are telling her the same thing. Now, of course, on Monday, she always could make the decision of, no, I'm going to decide to run for re-election in Congressional District 30, which I presently represent. But given she's gone on TV saying she's closer to a yes than a no, and she's sort of teasing out this idea of an announcement, I think there's a reasonably high probability, at least right now, that she decides to run for the U.S. Senate. Right now, James Tallarico is formally filed. He's in the race. Colin Allred has been running but hasn't formally filed yet, but is expected to file, although Crockett's entry could change that. But we're looking, I think, at a very competitive Democratic primary in March for the U.S. Senate race, both with Crockett, I think, particularly eyeing the prospect of being able to run against questioned Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton in November as one of the reasons why she might run. I think she's already acknowledged that it would be a much more uphill struggle against either Wesley Hunt or John Cornyn, the two other Republican candidates. But if she were able to run against Paxton, that she would have a greater prospect of victory.
Is there clarity about whether she or any of the other potential Democratic challengers would have an advantage in a race against either of those other candidates?
Right now the polling is pretty much just giving you the partisan numbers. That is, effectively, people are saying they would vote for Tallarico or Allred or Crockett at about the same levels. Now, at the margins, though, Crockett performs a little worse against Cornyn and against Hunt than, say, someone like Tallarico or Allred. But we haven't run the November campaign yet, and that's particularly important when running against someone like Ken Paxton, because Paxton's never had to run a November election, meaning that there is a large group of November voters who don't know much about Ken Paxton other than the fact that he's a Republican. But if he's the nominee, Democrats are going to spend $50 to $75 million letting those Texans know everything about Ken Paxton, and then we'll see what effect that has on the vote.
Renee, Congressman Troy Nehls has announced, the 22nd District Congressman, that he is not going to run for another term. He joins a number of other Texas congressional Republicans who have made such announcements. I guess one key distinction here is that it sounds like his twin brother, Trevor, is intending to run in his place. And again, this is another decision being made pretty late in the process, right before the filing deadline. Does it give T. Nehls an advantage? They may potentially replace another T. Nehls on the ballot?
I think so. Even though Trevor Nehls has had a spotty record in running for elected positions, he's lost a couple and I guess won a couple. Troy Nehls has come out and already endorsed his brother. And this is a district that was made quite a bit more Republican friendly with the 2021 redistricting maps. So I think it's pretty certain that this will continue to be a Republican seat. Now, who it'll be, we'll see. And there are, in fact, I'm sure there are people right now racing to file. We've already got Rebecca Clark, who is a Republican geophysicist, energy background. J.C. Chaton, which is a former state representative, looks like he's going to jump in. Nehls' former Democratic opponent, Marquette Green Scott, is going to jump in. So it'll certainly be a lively race in your neck of the woods, Craig.
Yeah, and Trevor Nehls has succeeded Troy Nehls before in one job and sought to succeed him in another and lost an election. So This is not new territory for the brothers.
Right. He first as constable, where he succeeded his brother, and then he attempted to run for Fort Bend County Sheriff, lost that election, attempted to run for county judge, lost that election narrowly in a controversial election against K.P. George. He has a strong advantage, though, in the fact that no one else had really been planning about this until just a few days ago. He's had time to prepare. It's also located smack dab within Nehls' territory, which is Fort Bend County. That is, about 60% of the voters are in that district, are in Fort Bend County, regardless of if we use the 2021 maps or the 2025 maps. I think Nehls is a strong favorite in the Republican primary, but it still needs to be run.
And a reminder that it's always election season, and proof of that is that early voting is underway for one city council seat. This is a runoff election. And tell us a little bit about where we stand on that and what you expect in terms of potential turnout.
So that's Dwight Boykins versus Alejandro Salinas in the runoff. There's also a Houston City College trustee race that no one's, I think, paying attention to, but it's also there. So if you go and vote in the city council race, there's a reasonable prospect in about a fifth of the city that you would vote in that HCC race. It's all going to be about turnout. There are about 1.2 million, a little more than that, registered voters in the city of Houston. I think thus far maybe 7,000 have voted. I think if we get to 5% turnout, that's going to be a good election.
What a sentence. If we get to 5% turnout, that's going to be a good election. Wow, the bar is low.
I would suspect it's going to be around 3%.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing else on the ballot.
Renee Cross is Senior Director and Researcher at the Hobby School of Public Affairs at the University of Houston. Mark Jones is a Political Science Fellow at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. Renee, Mark, thank you both very much.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
And just ahead, the diminishing impact of political scandals and how we got there. As Houston Matters continues.
You count on Houston Public Media. That's why you're here right now. Take the next step and become a new member today. Every gift makes a difference. And with a gift of $5 a month or more, you'll receive PBS Passport, a member benefit that lets you stream more of the shows you love anytime. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Hello Houston on the Houston Public Media YouTube page.
It's Hello Houston. Watch us on our YouTube channel, listen to our podcast, and listen to us live weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. here on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to helping Texas communities and emphasizing safety. More at texasmutual.com/TexansGetIt.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, it's the documentary The Mustangs, America's Wild Horses. Travel America to places few people have been and see some of the 80,000 wild horses in our country. Tonight at 7 on TV8.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Hey, remember when political scandals meant something? Like when Watergate dismantled Richard Nixon's presidency, when President Clinton was impeached for lying about an affair, when senators and congressmen resigned after overstepping legal or ethical lines. Heck, for a while there, missteps didn't even need to be all that scandalous. Ask Howard Dean, whose 2004 presidential campaign stalled out completely after incessant media coverage of a bizarre yelp he let out during a campaign rally. Yes, those were the days. Today, it seems scandals, big or small, don't move the needle quite like they used to. How come? That's one of the questions party politics co-host and University of Houston political science professor Brandon Rottinghaus tackles in his book, Scandal, Why Politicians Survive Controversy in a Partisan Era. Brandon, good morning.
Good morning, Greg.
As we talk about the changing nature of political scandals and their consequences, or lack thereof, we welcome you to the conversation with questions or comments at talk@houstonmatters.org or 713-440-8870. Why don't political scandals seem to matter quite the way they once did?
It's a great question, and I think I share your kind of concern about this because we need scandals to matter, and I'll explain a bit why. But really, a lot of the reason scandals don't matter anymore is because of the way that modern politics works in a lot of different ways, and that's that you have hyper-partisanship, you've got a siloed media environment, you've got motivated reasoning where people believe what they want to believe and aren't really willing to engage in the truth, and you've got a short attention span because of this kind of rapid news cycle. All these things are creating this moment where the scandals just don't matter that much and for very long.
Is it also just the tonnage of scandals?
Yeah, it feels like that there's just a lot more friction than there used to be. And one of the things I find in the book is that we can manufacture scandals out of very little. And that kind of outrage machine is really driving a lot of people's kind of sensibility about what is and is not a scandal. And it's harder for people to really sift through it all because everything feels outrageous nowadays.
All right, so what is a scandal and what isn't?
Well, in the book, what I do is to identify scandals that are legal wrongdoing, that there has to be some kind of possible infraction if the allegations are true, or something that's morally incorrect or morally problematic, like adultery. With that in mind, there are something like 300 plus presidential scandals. We have 300 something gubernatorial scandals and a very similar number of congressional scandals since about Watergate. So there are a lot of scandals that are happening, and it's certainly the case that we're not going to be away from them, but it is harder, I think, now for people to be able to identify what really matters to them. And one of the things we know from the research on this is that although scandals are still sort of impactful for some people in some cases, especially when the scandal's more recent, if it involves a kind of financial issue, but it, generally speaking, is for a lot of people something they're willing to look past because they have an ideological connection to a candidate. They like the policy issues the candidates talk about, and scandals kind of rank 3 to 4, kind of points down on something that they really care about.
Is it different in politics than it is in other walks of life?
Probably not. I'd love to do some additional work that looks at sort of celebrity politics because we see a lot of bounce back there too, right? People like Charlie Sheen, are able to kind of survive these scandals and really thrive in a way. And it is not something that is debilitative the way that we see, in past times where a politician or like a celebrity engaged in some kind of activity that people don't like, they ultimately disappear from the scene. That's not the case anymore. You can lean into those scandals in a way that oftentimes is helpful for them in a kind of general sense.
Is it perhaps that because we are in such a hyper-partisan world, we simply assume that all politicians lie? Everything out of their mouths is a lie, or that somebody's always doing something shady, or that we just don't care as much?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above to some degree. And it's certainly exacerbated by politicians who are able to use a kind of playbook to get out of these scandals. They'll say things like, well, it's not so much, me that's the problem. It's that they're coming for you and I'm in the way. Or they'll talk about how the scandal is just a witch hunt against them for some other unseen kind of political issue or some policy fight they're in. So there are a lot of ways that politicians themselves have been able to adapt this new kind of scandal playbook to be able to survive these scandals a little bit longer.
Does it vary depending on who we're talking about, which politicians?
It does. And one of the points of the research is that if you're an elected official, it often is the case that scandals aren't going to hurt you electorally or in terms of like your general career. Sometimes it does, of course. There are high-profile cases where that's true, but there are also high-profile cases where it's not true. So there's some variety in that. But one thing that's unmistakable is that since Watergate, we're really seeing a decline in how impactful scandals are in terms of removing a person from office, either for the purposes that they would take on their own, say to resign from the office, or where the voters may decide to vote them out. People ask if it's a Trump effect. It's not exactly a Trump effect, although Donald Trump has perfected this in a way that is certainly, I think, a kind of model for how other people are surviving these kinds of scandals. But it definitely is something we're seeing more and more. Really, it's the kind of 90s that we see as the cut point, and that's the kind of moment where we see hyper-partisanship really take root, and that's really the trigger for a lot of the ways that scandals are less impactful.
Well, one thing that certainly seems to have changed is there was an era, and maybe it was up until the 90s, where if an elected official at just about any level of office was involved in something considered scandalous, it would reach a threshold at which they would be shamed into, as you said, resigning themselves, or they'd say, okay, I can't go on with this. I can't put my family through this. I can't. Whatever it is, the heat has gotten too hot. I'm getting out of the kitchen. It doesn't seem like many do. Some do, but not that many anymore.
I think that's a great point. There's something happening with respect to the politicians' willingness to absorb a lot of this negativity for their family, for their political careers, for their political parties. There's a lot of a backsplash on these issues that politicians now just aren't as willing to ignore, or we're not as willing to accept. So that's definitely something that we're seeing as part of this. I don't know how to explain what that is, except just that politicians are power motivated. They want to stay in office. And so they're willing to do a lot of things to be able to maintain that, which often include taking some of these arrows that otherwise they could just avoid if they were to step aside.
Do me a favor, throw on those headphones because we want to take a call. We have Joseph on the line from Tomball. Joseph, what's your question or comment?
Well, that reminded me of this. I don't know if he was a congressman from Rosenberg, I believe, that he has a fake Facebook account that claiming that somebody was harassing him or something. But the reason why they are doing this is because they want to draw attention to themselves. And obviously, it's a free advertising that has been working for Donald Trump for 10 years now. And it continues working for them.
All right. Thanks for the call and for the comment. I believe he's referring to Fort Bend County Judge K.P. George and one of his staffers who had set up some fake social media accounts that suggested that somebody out there was attacking them. And so that became a big scandal. He's still in office at the moment anyway. So there's that. And then, as he said, as the caller said, this becomes free advertising. In some ways, it's the old thing that, any publicity, even bad publicity, is good publicity, right?
I think that's totally true. This is definitely an insightful comment. And we're seeing this a lot in modern politics where it doesn't matter what attention you're getting as long as you're getting attention. Because one of the things that's odd about scandals is that it actually helps in lots of ways. It's able to focus on you and your issues. It's a way to be able to prime the base. If you can use it effectively, you can say that this is a kind of partisan moment and that rallies the supporters that you have. And sometimes that's enough to win. It also is a huge boon for fundraising, and that wasn't always the case. So we're seeing now politicians able to really benefit financially from this because they can use this as leverage in the fundraising. So I totally agree that the way that the scandals emerge and the way that they carry on is sometimes a plus for politicians. That's a scary thing because, as I mentioned, if we lose scandals, then we lose the accountability that it often brings. The real crisis here is that scandals are a canary in the coal mine. And if we have this political moment where they don't matter as much anymore, then we lose the ability for those scandals to be able to generate the good things that we care about, like ethics reform, which it does happen eventually. We can see this as a way to recalibrate the kind of politicians that we want to have in office. The kind of internal audits and financial investigations that do happen after scandals are less important and don't have as much relevance after, if scandals don't matter. So there are all these sort of things that are definitely on the chopping block if scandals go away.
You mentioned President Trump and that it may not be, you say it's not just him, but he's maybe the best at navigating all of this. Which came first? the changing attitudes towards scandals or President Trump and his approach leading to that change?
That's a great question. I think that the attitudes had changed first. Some of the research I do is to kind of drill in on the Clinton years, where, as you mentioned, there were this sort of high-profile scandals, some of which involved the president. And one of the things that we found is that basically you don't see any real impact of the president's scandals on his legacy. That's actually true for a lot of presidents who faced scandals in office. I also had a little survey project that looked at Mayor Turner. When he left office, there was a little mini scandal where he was asked to, basically the Houston First was asked to pay for a little book that he created. It was a kind of history of his time in office, and it, ruffled some feathers and became a little bit of a controversy. And what I found was that basically people didn't much care about it. And it was a small thing and didn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. But it's another example of just how when you consider all the other factors like accountability and you consider partisanship, these things just don't matter as much for people.
Let's get in one more call. Lee is in League City. Lee, what's your question or comment?
I was asking about the Al Franken effect, as I call it, where he was forced to resign in a scandal that maybe didn't rise to the point where it was worth resigning. I think even some of the people have said they kind of regretted making that into a big issue. Is that some of the backlash against, scandals ruining political careers?
All right, thanks for the call and for the question.
Yeah, it's a really great point. You certainly see a lot of politicians who've resigned say they wish they hadn't. Andrew Cuomo is a great example, who ran again for mayor of New York and ended up losing. But the fact that he was back, I think, did typify how politicians now look at scandals as being not career-ending. James McGreevey, who resigned as the governor of New Jersey, was run out of office effectively for lying about an adulterous affair he had with another man. This basically outed him and was a moral issue because of the affair. But he ran again for mayor of a smaller city in New Jersey and lost just yesterday. But again, it's an example, and he was very clear that he thought that this isn't something that nowadays would be a problem for a politician. So there are, I think, kind of changing nature of the way scandal functions for politicians, and they're seeing ways they can accommodate these kind of allegations of wrongdoing.
UH political science professor Brandon Rottinghaus co-hosts Houston Public Media's Party Politics program. He is the author of Scandal: Why Politicians Survive Controversy in a Partisan Era. Brandon, thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
And just ahead, why Houston recently hosted a national showcase for black female soccer players. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
Support comes from Discovery Green Conservancy and H-Town Holiday Lights by H-Town Frankie, a light display set to music and inspired by Houston's hip-hop culture. Presented by PNC. More information at discoverygreen.com.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is made possible in part by Ellen Benninghoven and Dr. Michael Schaefer, and with gifts from listeners like you.
Since women's soccer became an Olympic event in 1996, the U.S. has dominated, medaling in 6 of 7 games, including 5 gold medals. And yet the path to the pitch, the soccer field, hasn't always been as accessible to everyone as it could be. That's why last month, Prairie View A&M University hosted the first ever Black Women's Soccer Player Showcase with a specific goal: to help establish a talent pipeline connecting the next generation of black players to collegiate and pro soccer opportunities. Efforts like this seem to be paying off already, as nearly half of the U.S. women's national team are black, so are 12% of the players in the National Women's Soccer League. Houston Matters producer Laura Walker visited last month's showcase, where she caught up with one of those soccer pros.
My name is Brianna Pinto, and I'm here representing the Black Women's Player Collective on behalf of the NWSL.
And what is the Black Women's Player Collective?
The Black Women's Player Collective is an organization that was started in the NWSL to create more space for Black women in our sport. We're all about inclusivity and advocacy to ensure that the next generation of athletes will have an opportunity to play the game at the highest levels. I'm in my 5th professional season in the NWSL.
How has this showcase been so far? What's been like the response of the players that are here?
The Next Wave National Showcase has been incredible, because seeing this platform of girls coming in from all over the country representing all their youth clubs and all the people they have invested in them is a really beautiful experience. It's definitely something that I wish I had when I was a youth player, because you're seeing the role models who are investing their time and energy into these girls. And I truly believe that this platform is going to give them the opportunity to reach higher levels, whether that's collegiate soccer or professional soccer. And there's a lot of talent in the room, and we're excited to just give them the chance to be seen by scouts and coaches and agents and other mentors.
That's awesome to provide a space like this so that they can get that information and get experience, from a player like you, and get to speak one-on-one about how things are going. So, the league is diversifying. We're seeing more and more, black faces when it comes to players. What's been your own experience in the NWSL?
Well, when I think about even before I joined the NWSL, I had very few black teammates growing up. So actually coming to Gotham FC in 2021 was my first team in the NWSL where I was drafted, and I was on the most diverse team in the league. So I was fortunate to have several other BWPC members who were my teammates, who showed me the way and showed me what advocacy meant at the pro level. And to see where the BWPC is today and the resources that we have to create a bigger platform for the next generation of athletes is really empowering. So the fact that I can play a small role in making it a safer, more inclusive space for more women is something that I'm very proud of.
That's awesome. And what are some of those resources that you've been able to tap into?
We've been doing webinars just talking about racial equality and how we can become more educated as a league. We've put on mini pitch events in every city across the U.S. for championship weekend, offering kids, especially at the boys and girls clubs, to be introduced to the sport of soccer. We've made major donations to youth clubs and organizations that serve minorities, especially in underserved communities. And we have a major partner in Adidas that allows us to provide apparel to our women in the NWSL as well as the kids that we're serving.
That's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
It's important to emphasize creating space for opportunity and how that helps grow the game of soccer in America. And the BWPC is proud to be a part of this historic movement, creating pathways and exposure for young girls. To be a part of this moment for me is phenomenal. The platform didn't exist when I was growing up, and to know that I'm helping grow the game in soccer in public and private sectors is something more than a girl could ever have dreamed of.
That's awesome. And, what does it mean for you that, one, you didn't have this growing up, two, we're on a historically Black college and university, Prairie View A&M. What does it mean to have an event like this, and it's the first at a place like this?
Well, I think there's so many synergies between Allstate, Black Star, BWPC. All of these organizations are passionate about making space for Black women in the sport. And we're so thankful for Prairie View A&M for welcoming us, because we want to continue to uplift HBCUs because they've done so many important things in the Black community with educational opportunities. And because we're encouraging education and athletics to these young women, we hope that they one day will want to represent a historically Black college or university, because we need our own to invest in our own institutions. Because if we bring soccer to a community like this and really enrich their programming from a soccer standpoint, who's to say that Prairie View A&M or other HBCUs can't be leaders in the collegiate space? So I think there's so much room to grow, and there's so many people that are passionate about seeing more inclusivity and more diverse people in the sport. So the fact that we have this opportunity to put on a showcase of this magnitude with so much talent and so many influential people from all different spaces has been such a win this weekend.
Name is Patrick Rose. We're here at the Allstate Next Wave National Showcase, really trying to provide a platform for athletes, specifically girls, to really get seen by different college and professional scouts. We launched Black Star as a platform in 2021, and we always had in our minds that we wanted to really provide, obviously, access, opportunity, really just kind of growing the culture of soccer through content and storytelling, through grassroots programming, etc. But definitely having a national event was always in the back of our mind, as far as how can we take what we do locally and really do it on a national scale. So it's really cool to see just a lot of the ideas and things that we thought about in the beginning really culminate to this moment. So it means a lot, and especially starting with the girls. I know women's sports is having just a great momentum. We really want to continue to kind of invest in women's sports right now. I don't want that momentum to die. So I think starting with girls is really, it was important for us as a brand to do, just because you really want to have that growth, continue to grow. So super excited and happy about this moment. We want to just build upon it going forward.
So what do you hope this inaugural event sets in motion for the future generations of Black girls soccer players?
Yeah, so I think also for what we do, really just knowing that representation matters. In soccer, traditionally has been a sport that really hasn't had a lot of Black representation, even more pronounced on the female side. So I think for us is how do we showcase these girls, them being in high school, going to college, some maybe going to the professional level, and having them be an example to others coming behind them. So it's about how do you increase representation, how do you provide that pathway, and once you have one person make it, just kind of makes it more tangible. So that's kind of one portion of it. And then I guess secondarily, it's about just providing that real pathway. Some of them are coming from situations where they may not have exposure to different colleges. So for them to come here and have all these different schools looking at them, I think it's just a great way for them to just get that exposure and hopefully take it to the next level.
And, in regards to exposure, how do you think the showcase is helping to close that gap in access to exposure for Black athletes compared to other demographics?
Yeah, not for sure. I think specifically for Black athletes, oftentimes just looking at soccer as a sport, at the club level, it's just very cost prohibitive. It's expensive. It costs anywhere between $4,000 and $10,000 per year if you really want to play at that high level. So oftentimes, folks from our community, they may or may not have that resource. So if you don't have it, you don't really have the opportunity to get seen, because if you're not playing at a lot of these suburban clubs, that's where all the scouts and opportunities lie. So if you're in an environment that maybe doesn't have a team, maybe you're in an inner city environment where you're good, but you're just not playing on those teams, it's really hard to get seen. So that's really a big thing about the exposure, bringing the scouts to them versus having them to kind of pay for the experience. And we also, just via our sponsor Allstate, we were able to make this opportunity free in terms of like travel, food, room and board, just really knocking out all those barriers so they can have just the top of the line experience.
Wow, so that's awesome that you were able to put it on, at not a cost to the players. So do you decide on the players that come? Are they all kind of from the same area? How did that come together?
Yeah, so it's a mix of different things. So because we've been doing local talent ID events for the last 4 years, through some of our past events, we've been able to identify some of the girls that are here today through those local events in different cities. And then we are also just really wanted to have outreach to different just areas as well. So it was part our own program, seeing a few girls there. And also we got recommendations from our national network of coaches, scouts, and community members that have folks from California, from Texas, from Chicago, really all over the United States, Florida as well. So we had representation from both coasts, and I was just able to do that through our network, but also just through our own programming as well. And just, I guess, a quick thing to add on that is the BWPC team, they definitely provided a lot of great recommendations too, because a lot of them are connected to the youth game. Some are coaches, so they have provided at least 4 or 5 recommendations that we were able to take a look at and invite to the camp.
We're here, on the historic campus of Prairie View A&M University. Why was Prairie View A&M selected as a venue for this historic showcase, and what was it about its legacy or community that made it a right fit?
No, definitely. I'm a HBCU graduate, so I played soccer at Howard University. So I'm all about investing into HBCUs. And when I think about just HBCU athletic programs, largely there's just a lot of different financial constraints when it comes to the funding and the just different things that they're not really spotlighted in the way that they need to be. So I think there's been a movement to kind of like reinvest in the last couple of years, and I was able to get connected to Coach Abe last year at our ID camp at Houston, and I know just Prairie View has some of the best facilities in Texas. We really wanted a place where it could be a warmer climate, just given the time of year that we're doing this. So I think just the fact that we had a great partner in Coach Abe and the women's program, they have a great facility, and I'm just really wanting to amplify HBCUs of like the 3 reasons why we chose to have it here.
It's such a great experience for them to be so close to professional players and get to have that one-on-one time to see how they are in person. How do they live their lives outside of the game? So how did you decide on the themes for the sessions, including mental health, hair care, like you said, nutrition? Why were these prioritized?
Yeah, so it was definitely a joint effort between us and BWPC. Like, given that this event is targeted towards young Black women, they definitely gave us just a lot of great insight as far as like what are some of the most pressing issues that an athlete may face in these positions. So it was kind of a I guess brainstorming of like what could be helpful, what could be some of the things that are like top line issues that they deal with as players that they know that they're going to go through now, and kind of really giving them the tools to helpfully tackle some of the issues that they've dealt with as players, just in a more fruitful way. So a joint effort, just kind of brainstorming with them, and then we were able to land on the topics.
And with nearly half of the U.S. women's national team and a growing share of the National Women's Soccer League made up of Black players, how is this showcase designed to further accelerate representation at that elite level?
Yeah. And I think it's just that. It's really about how do we just help culture and cultivate the next generation of talent. Even there was a cool moment a couple of days ago where the players were just naming their favorite athletes that were a part of this new generation. It was just like so many names that we just didn't really have a couple of years back. So I think it's really inspiring for them to be here, but maybe they will be the next person, or maybe they can just have a mindset of like, I can do this too. So it's a lot of different things, but I think just the fact that other people are doing it, the fact that they're seeing real examples of people that have played at national teams and WSL, it's really about just inspiring and hopefully kind of giving them a blueprint for what that looks like.
Black Star soccer director Patrick Rose there. We also heard from National Women's Soccer League player Brianna Pinto, who just this week signed a 2-year contract to play with the Chicago Stars. They spoke with Houston Matters producer Laura Walker. And that's all for today's show. The Houston Matters team includes Michael Haggerty, Joshua Zinn, Brenda Valdivia, Mincho Jacob, and Laura Walker. Jared Carroll's our technical director. On tomorrow's show, comedian Jay Jordan ahead of his dates at Punchline Houston. And we meet the Jordan family of jazz musicians from Louisiana who are performing this weekend at Houston's El Dorado Ballroom. I'm Craig Cohen. Join us tomorrow for those and other Houston Matters.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Baylor College of Medicine. With 125